Now, it will be no shock to you guys whatsoever that Scott Jennings is still doing the rounds, crying about the fact that the Virginia redistricting efforts have been approved. Now, in this clip, we're going to see him on Kasie Hunt's The Arena, still complaining, still crying foul play that the Virginia redistricting efforts have been approved. As usual, let's watch the clip in full. I'll give you guys my thoughts at the end.
Yeah, it's a good point. Alex Thompson, I mean, what did you read into the results in Virginia, the margin here? It was relatively close, the vote. I know that a number of people I was talking to last night on the Hill, that's what they were focused on, right, was by how much were Democrats likely to win this. What are Democrats saying to you today?
Well, they're obviously crowing because they won, and there was deep anxiety, and there was deep anxiety going into the race. Feeling that maybe Governor Spanberger had, hurt a little bit of her early polling lead by leaning so far into this when she was more running on electability last year. But I will say that more of the drama was on the Republican side, where there is sort of a circular firing squad, because James Blair is right. The margin was better than it was in 2024. But then the question is, well, why didn't the Trump super PAC come in with any of their huge amount of money and didn't spend any? And then you even saw James Blair did not commit to spending all of that money in the midterms either. And that's creating a lot of frustration and tension in the party.
What's that about, Scott?
Well, I do think we would have benefited from more spending early on. I think the Yes campaign got out to a fast start. I mean, if you followed the race closely, the No people had momentum at the end, and maybe another week or two they might have caught them. It was about a 3-point race. Regarding the whole rigged conversation, I'll just say I think a lot of people in Virginia Republican circles think it was rigged in this way, that the referendum itself is a violation of the Virginia Constitution. I spoke to former Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli on my radio show just a few minutes ago. He thinks the Virginia Supreme Court may well throw this out because they violated the calendar rules that are in the Virginia Constitution, among other arguments. And so even though the Democrats won the race last night, this may not be over if the Virginia Supreme Court were to toss it maybe as soon as May.
Yeah, so true.
Well, and first of all, there are two different things that are happening here. Democrats are taking these measures and putting them on the ballot for voters to vote on. And it is very different than what happened in Texas, where it was rammed through and voters did not get to vote on that. Donald Trump wanted it. They ended up delivering it. And so there are two very different, and Republicans should be scared because there are two very different tactics. The voters are on Democratic side versus the voters did not vote for this in Texas, and then we'll see what happens in other Republican states. We'll also say about this in terms of the politics, yes, this should be eye-opening for Republicans. It's not just this race. It's every special election that Democrats have been up in over the last year.
It's not every.
Most of them, Democrats have overperformed.
We only cover the ones where Democrats do, but there have been some Republican overperformances. I mean.
Significantly. And so looking into, I think everyone looked at Speaker Johnson's comments about how we're going to win, and I agree, if he says that he's not going to win, he can't fundraise. So he has to say that, but everyone looks at that and no one believes it. No one, I don't even know a Republican that believes that Republicans are going to win this November.
Can I just quickly add, I also think you may look at those 3 points and it's so close because people don't like the redistricting, big picture in general, gerrymandering. It may not reflect. We'll see what the numbers are like when it's congressional district by congressional district.
I think that's a really interesting point, and I think it speaks to what the governor was saying about people feeling like they are being lost in the process, the process for power. And I mean, Scott Jennings, part of that, I want to play for you what Congressman Don Bacon had to say about the redistricting in Texas, which is a big part of where this all started. Let's watch what he said.
You got to play chess. You got to think 2 or 3, 4 moves. And when you have an adversary or opponent, a political opponent, you got to always think, what are they going to do in response? So I think this is foreseeable that it wasn't just going to be Texas. This has been going on for a while, but I think in the end, the Republicans may end up losing in the long run here.
There does seem to be a lot of regret about kicking off this mid-decade redistricting cycle. Do you regret it?
I mean, at best. Well, do I regret? I mean,
do you regret the
I didn't
Republicans
personally kick it off, but I think at best it's probably going to be a wash. We'll see what Florida decides to do, and I guess we're still waiting on the Supreme Court possibly changing the Voting Rights Act. We'll see what that leads to. But yeah, I think at best it's going to be a wash. A lot of money and time has been spent on this, and I'm not sure it gained a huge advantage. I will just say for Texas's part, the legislators in Texas, as far as I last checked, are elected by the people. So these are the people's representatives. And B, their maps in Texas are far more balanced and fair than what you now have in Virginia. I mean, Virginia is now essentially ruled the Republican Party to be illegal. That's what Abigail Spanberger has basically done. This was the revenge of the D.C.
Scott,
bureaucrats.
no one has said the Republican Party is illegal in Virginia.
I mean, go from 6 to 5 to 10 to 1, and you've got 5 of the 10 that are going to live within 10 miles of each other.
They drew the map in the most aggressive way possible. I totally agree with that. That doesn't mean that it's illegal to be a Republican.
Okay, well, it's going to be pretty darn hard to make it to the congressional delegation. And how do you think, outside of the D.C. suburbs, how do you think the rest of the state feels? They feel like they've been disenfranchised. Look at the vote. Look who voted no. It's everywhere that's going to lose their congressional representation. How do you think the people in the military feel?
But now you care about the democratic process, and so did the governor. Where were we when we brought this up in Texas? Where were Republicans? They were not talking about the democratic process. It was Democrats out there talking about it. So it's funny that all of a sudden now Republicans are into it.
Governor, I want to give you the last word here, because I mean, as we look ahead here, there is this big question about Florida, but one other question that's also live is whether the Senate is really in play. What's your view of kind of where that stands as somebody who, again, I always love having folks on who are really tied into their communities. Obviously, we're here in Washington. We can read the polls, same as everybody else. But I imagine you're picking things up there that we're not.
Well, first of all, everyone in D.C. is talking about winners and losers. I think everyone outside of D.C. is going, everyone looks foolish, whether it be Texas, California, North Carolina, or Virginia, because people have got some serious issues they've got to deal with, and the House is not moving on many of those issues. Regarding the Senate, I think everything's up in the air. I don't think anyone knows, and it's primarily because of the independent voter. And we don't know what they're going to do, especially in the Sun Belt states where there has been so much immigration, especially since COVID, into these states in North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Texas, Georgia. I mean, the immigration from New York and California has been unbelievable of people moving here. The question is going to be, how are they going to vote? And we don't really have a benchmark to measure that by past elections because of the migration coming to these states and the demigration leaving other states. So it's going to be very interesting that data is accurate this year in predicting outcomes. And one other thing, just because political consultants and political scientists say we've moved the district, even District 1 in North Carolina is now favoring Republicans, that does not guarantee a Republican victory. It's still going to be a very, very tight race with a pretty popular Democratic incumbent. So just because a Democratic or Republican consultant says these are +5 or +10, things can move quickly, especially with the independent voter.
All right, former North Carolina Governor Pat McCrory, thanks very much for joining the panel.
So he's doing it again. You guys have just seen it. He's crying and complaining again. And not only is he now complaining that it is that they lost, they're now doing the typical playbook of saying it was a rigged vote. That's what's happening right now. Donald Trump done the exact same thing. He put it out. They're trying to claim that mail-in ballots are the reason as to why the vote was rigged. Honestly, these guys are the worst losers in the history of competition. In the history. I love the question that it is that the lady who's sitting next to Scott Jennings asked, okay, so now you care about the democratic process. Well, where was you in Texas? See, this is the major thing and the major problem with everything that these guys are trying to say and do. They started this war. They started it. And because of the fact that it is that they started it and now it's backfiring on them, well, they're now starting to have regrets. They're now starting to get a bit frustrated about things. But the reality is this, they really kicked off this thought process. Republicans have been the ones that have been redrawing maps in their favor for decades. For decades, when the Democrats introduced legislation that would have banned gerrymandering unilaterally across the entire of the United States, it was all Republicans who voted against it. So it's just a frustration for them because they wrote the playbook, but they're losing at their own game. This is what it is that I say when it comes to Democrats. Continue what you're doing, continue the fight, and continue to make these people feel what it is that they're trying to hold off and prevent against anyone else. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section below. Scott Jennings tears are something that I will always welcome. I love to see it, and I'll always encourage it. Appreciate you guys. Hit subscribe if you're interested. Give the video a thumbs up, and also hype the video if you can. See you guys in the next one.